The familiar scent of mothballs clung to the fabric, a ghostly reminder of hand-me-downs and second best. "It's perfectly fine, dear," Aunt Carol chirped, holding up the faded, ill-fitting dress. Fine for whom? Certainly not for the most important day of my life, or so I had hoped. My cousin, Tiffany, was getting married. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion, a celebration of love and new beginnings. For everyone, it seemed, except me. From the moment the engagement was announced, I felt like an afterthought, a supporting character in someone else's grand production. Maybe it was always like this, and I was just finally seeing it for what it was. Tiffany was the golden child in our extended family. Beautiful, popular, and seemingly effortlessly successful. Whatever Tiffany wanted, Tiffany got. And I was just me. Always a little in her shadow, always a step behind. It wasn't that I didn't love my cousin, but there was a constant, low-humming awareness of the difference in how we were treated, a difference that stung more acutely as we got older. The wedding preparations were in full swing, and my phone buzzed with group chats about flower arrangements, cake tastings, and seating charts. I tried to participate, to show enthusiasm, but it was hard when I felt like my opinions didn't really matter. Then came the dreaded text from my Aunt Carol, Tiffany's mother. "Sweetheart," it read, "Tiffany and I were just going through some of her old dresses, and we found this beautiful bridesmaid dress from her friend's wedding a few years ago. It's a lovely shade of lavender, and it would look just perfect on you. Saves us from having to order another one. Let me know what you think." I stared at the text, my stomach sinking. A hand-me-down? For my cousin's wedding? A wedding that I was already feeling excluded from? I took a deep breath and typed back a polite but firm reply. "Thank you for thinking of me, Aunt Carol, but I actually already bought a dress. Tiffany and I talked about the color palette, and I found something that I really love." The response was immediate. "Oh, honey, are you sure? It would save us a lot of hassle, and the lavender one is just so flattering. Plus, Tiffany wore it, so it's kind of special." "Yes, I'm sure," I replied, trying to keep the irritation out of my tone. "I'm really looking forward to wearing the dress I chose." That should have been the end of it, but of course, it wasn't. The next day I got a call from my mother. "Your Aunt Carol called," she said, her voice laced with a familiar blend of concern and disapproval. "She said you refused to wear the bridesmaid dress they offered." "Mom, it was a dress Tiffany wore years ago to someone else's wedding," I explained, my voice rising slightly. "Why would I want to wear a hand-me-down to my own cousin's wedding?" "Well, it's just a dress, Sarah," she said, using my full name, which I knew meant she was taking Aunt Carol's side. "And it would have been a nice gesture. You know how much your aunt and Tiffany have done for us over the years." Oh, here we go. The guilt trip. The constant reminder of how indebted our family supposedly was to Tiffany's parents. It was true that they were more financially successful, but the implication that we should always defer to their preferences, even on something as personal as what I would wear to a family event, always rubbed me the wrong way. "Mom, I appreciate everything they've done, but this is my choice. I want to wear a new dress that I picked out myself." All right, she sighed. "Just try to be considerate, honey. You know how sensitive your aunt can be." I ended the call feeling deflated. It seemed like no matter what I did, I was always going to be the one who wasn't quite good enough, the one who needed to be more accommodating, more understanding of Tiffany's needs and desires. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of parties and showers, all centered around Tiffany. I attended them all, forcing a smile and offering my congratulations, but inside a resentment was starting to simmer. It wasn't just the dress incident. It was a lifetime of feeling like I was playing second fiddle. There was the time in high school when we both auditioned for the lead role in the school play. Tiffany, who had barely rehearsed, got the part, while I, who had poured my heart and soul into it, was relegated to the chorus. Or the countless family gatherings where Tiffany's accomplishments were lauded while my own were met with polite nods. It was always Tiffany, Tiffany, Tiffany. The day of the wedding finally arrived. I got ready in my hotel room, carefully putting on the dress I had chosen, a beautiful emerald green gown that made me feel confident and elegant. As I looked in the mirror, I couldn't help but feel a sense of defiance. This was my moment to feel good about myself, regardless of the expectations or unspoken comparisons. The ceremony was lovely. Tiffany looked radiant, and her groom seemed genuinely smitten. I clapped and cheered along with everyone else, but a part of me felt detached, like I was watching a movie rather than participating in a family event. The reception was held at a fancy country club. The ballroom was decorated with elaborate floral arrangements, and a live band played upbeat music. I found my assigned table and sat down, making polite conversation with the other guests. Then, Aunt Carol approached our table, her face set in a tight smile. "Sarah," she said, her voice a little too loud, "I was just looking at the pictures from Tiffany's friend's wedding, and that lavender dress really was stunning, don't you think?" Everyone at the table looked at me, waiting for my response. I felt my cheeks flush. Why was she doing this? Why couldn't she just let it go? I took a sip of my water and tried to keep my voice even. "Yes, Aunt Carol, it was a nice dress." "Tiffany looked so lovely in it," she continued, not missing a beat. "It's such a shame it's just hanging in her closet, barely worn." I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Was she intentionally trying to make me feel bad? In front of everyone? "Well, I'm sure someone else will get to enjoy it someday," I said, trying to steer the conversation in a different direction. But Aunt Carol wasn't finished. "You know," she said, leaning closer, "Tiffany was actually a little disappointed that you didn't want to wear it. She thought it would be a sweet gesture of cousinly love." That was it. Something inside me snapped. The years of feeling overlooked, the constant comparisons, the subtle digs, it all came crashing down in that moment. I stood up from the table, my hands trembling slightly. "Aunt Carol," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "with all due respect, I think it's a little ridiculous that you're still talking about this dress. I chose something that I feel beautiful in, and frankly, I don't think it's anyone else's business." Aunt Carol's eyes widened in shock. The other guests at the table shifted uncomfortably. I could feel Tiffany's gaze on me from across the room. "Sarah," my mother hissed from the next table over, her face a mask of embarrassment. I ignored her. I wasn't finished. "You know," I continued, looking directly at Aunt Carol, "it's always been about Tiffany, hasn't it? Her achievements, her preferences, her feelings. I'm tired of being the one who always has to accommodate, the one who always comes second." A hush fell over the immediate area. Even the band seemed to have quieted down slightly. "I love Tiffany," I said, my voice softening a bit, "but today is her day. Let's focus on celebrating her happiness, not on what dress I should or shouldn't be wearing." I took a deep breath and looked around at the stunned faces. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need some air." I turned and walked out of the ballroom, the weight of years of unspoken resentment lifting with every step. I didn't know what the fallout would be, but in that moment I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, I had spoken my truth, and it felt liberating. I found a quiet corner on the patio overlooking the golf course. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the manicured green. I sat down on a bench, the cool evening air a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was a text from Tiffany. "Can we talk?" I hesitated for a moment before replying. "Sure. Meet me outside?" A few minutes later, Tiffany appeared, her elaborate wedding dress flowing behind her. She looked flustered, her perfect composure slightly ruffled. "What was that all about?" she asked, her voice a mixture of anger and hurt. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond the entitled facade. Maybe she wasn't as oblivious as I thought. "It was about more than just the dress, Tiffany," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It was about feeling like I always come second. It was about feeling like my feelings and preferences don't matter as much as yours." Tiffany was silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the manicured lawn. I didn't realize you felt that way, she said softly. Maybe not, I replied. But it's the truth. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the gentle chirping of crickets. The tension between us slowly started to dissipate, replaced by a fragile sense of understanding. I'm sorry, Tiffany said finally, her voice barely a whisper. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know, I said. But sometimes it just happens. The sun had almost completely set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The wedding celebrations continued inside, but out here in the quiet twilight, something had shifted between me and my cousin. Maybe it wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. A small crack in the wall that had been building between us for years. Do you want to go back inside? Tiffany asked, breaking the silence. I hesitated for a moment. Did I want to go back to the forced smiles and polite conversations? Or did I want to hold on to this fragile moment of honesty? Maybe in a little while, I said. Let's just stay out here for a bit longer. Tiffany nodded, and we sat in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight fade away. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was in anyone's shadow. I felt like I was standing in my own light. After a while, the cool night air started to feel a little chilly. Tiffany shivered slightly, pulling her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Maybe we should go back in, she suggested, her voice still subdued. I nodded. Yeah, maybe. We walked back into the ballroom together, the noise and energy hitting us like a wave. As we re-entered, I noticed my parents sitting at a table near the entrance, their faces etched with worry. My mother's eyes immediately locked onto mine, and she beckoned me over with a frantic wave. Sarah, what on earth happened? She whispered as I approached the table. Your aunt is furious, and Tiffany looked like she was about to cry. Mom, I just told Aunt Carol how I felt, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. It wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal, my father interjected, his brow furrowed. Sarah, this is your cousin's wedding day. You can't just cause a scene like that. I didn't cause a scene, Dad, I retorted. I simply stood up for myself. But the timing, my mother exclaimed. Couldn't you have waited until after the wedding? Honestly, Mom, I didn't plan for it to happen then, I said. It just came out. Tiffany joined us, looking from my parents to me with a hesitant expression. It's okay, Aunt Susan, Uncle Mark, she said softly. We talked about it. It's fine. My parents exchanged confused glances. Tiffany, the usually unflappable golden child, was actually defending me? The rest of the reception passed in a bit of a blur. I tried to mingle and make small talk, but the earlier confrontation hung in the air like a thick fog. Aunt Carol kept her distance, shooting me icy glares whenever our eyes met. My parents, while outwardly polite, seemed to be walking on eggshells around me. Tiffany, however, was surprisingly different. She made an effort to include me in conversations and even sought me out on the dance floor for a brief, slightly awkward twirl. As the night drew to a close, Tiffany hugged me goodbye, a genuine warmth in her embrace. Thank you for being honest with me, Sarah, she whispered in my ear. I'll think about what you said. I watched her drive away with her new husband, a strange mix of relief and apprehension swirling within me. I had finally spoken my truth, but what would the consequences be? The immediate aftermath was exactly as I had anticipated. The phone calls started the next day. First it was my mother, her voice laced with disappointment. Your aunt is absolutely devastated, Sarah. She said you ruined Tiffany's wedding. Mom, I didn't ruin anything, I argued. I just had a moment of honesty. Besides, Tiffany seemed okay with it. Well, your aunt certainly isn't, she retorted. And your father is very upset with you. Then came the call from Aunt Carol herself. Her voice was cold and formal. Sarah, I am appalled by your behavior at the wedding. It was selfish and disrespectful. I don't appreciate you causing such a scene on what was supposed to be a joyous occasion for Tiffany. I took a deep breath and decided to stand my ground. Aunt Carol, I understand that you're upset, but I felt like I needed to say what was on my mind. It wasn't just about the dress. It was about a lifetime of feeling overlooked. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Aunt Carol sighed. Well, I suppose I can see your point, a little, but the timing was terrible. Maybe, I conceded, but it happened. The following weeks were marked by an awkward silence within the family. Holiday gatherings felt strained, and conversations were stilted. It was clear that my outburst at the wedding had created a rift. However, something unexpected also started to happen. Tiffany began reaching out to me more. Not just the obligatory birthday texts or holiday greetings, but genuine phone calls and messages asking about my life. We talked about our jobs, our friends, our hopes and dreams. It was like the confrontation at the wedding had somehow cleared the air between us, allowing us to connect on a deeper level. One afternoon, a few months after the wedding, Tiffany called and asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I was surprised but agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown, and as we talked, I noticed a change in her. She seemed less concerned with appearances and more interested in genuine connection. I've been thinking a lot about what you said at the wedding, she admitted, stirring her latte. About feeling overlooked. I guess. I never really considered how my actions might affect you. It's okay, Tiffany, I said. I know you didn't do it intentionally. But maybe I should have been more aware, she continued. Maybe I took our relationship for granted. You've always been there, always supportive, and I guess I just assumed it would always be that way. We talked for hours that day, about our childhood, our teenage years, and the different paths our lives had taken. It was a surprisingly open and honest conversation, the kind we had never had before. By the time we said goodbye, I felt a sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, our relationship could evolve into something more genuine. The new rule I had unknowingly set that day at the wedding started to permeate other areas of my life as well. I found myself speaking up more at work, expressing my opinions and ideas without hesitation. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do, without feeling the need to apologize or make excuses. It was as if standing up for myself in that one dramatic moment had given me permission to be more assertive in all aspects of my life. My relationship with my parents also started to shift, albeit more slowly. They were still a little wary of my newfound assertiveness, but they also seemed to respect it, even if they didn't always understand it. There were fewer guilt trips and more genuine attempts to connect with me on my own terms. Years passed. Tiffany and I remained close, our relationship evolving from a somewhat superficial cousinly bond into a genuine friendship. We celebrated each other's milestones, supported each other through tough times, and shared the kind of easy camaraderie that comes with true understanding. My career flourished. I took on new challenges, embraced opportunities, and found a sense of fulfillment in my work that I had never experienced before. I even started pursuing some of my long-dormant hobbies, rediscovering passions that I had put aside for years. Aunt Carol remained Aunt Carol. While she never fully apologized for her behavior, our interactions became less strained over time. She seemed to have accepted that I was no longer the quiet, accommodating niece who would always go along with her plans. There was a newfound respect in her tone, a subtle acknowledgement that I had a voice of my own. One Thanksgiving, years after Tiffany's wedding, our extended family gathered at my parents' house. As I sat around the dinner table, surrounded by loved ones, I couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. The air felt lighter, the conversations more authentic. There was still a hint of the old dynamics, but it was overshadowed by a sense of genuine connection and acceptance. Aunt Carol raised her glass for a toast. "To family," she said, her gaze sweeping across the table. "May we always cherish the bonds that connect us, even when things get a little complicated." She gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod, and I returned it with a smile. Later that evening, as I was helping my mother clear the dishes, she turned to me, a soft smile on her face. "You know, Sarah," she said, "I was so worried about what happened at Tiffany's wedding. But looking back, I think it was probably the best thing that could have happened. I raised an eyebrow, surprised by her words. "It made you realize that you deserve to be heard," she continued. "And it made us all realize that we need to listen." I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. It had taken a dramatic outburst at a wedding to get there, but finally, after years of feeling like I was playing a supporting role in someone else's life, I was the star of my own. And it felt pretty damn good. The new rule I had inadvertently created, the rule that I would no longer accept being second best, had not only changed my relationship with my family, but had also transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined.